Yo, what's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the DLloyd NBA podcast. We have a pretty good show for you, a lot of topics to talk about, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to hop straight into it. But today, like I said, we're going to be talking about Dwyane Wade, Markelle Fultz, and his new and improved jump shot, Dwight Howard and his plans with the Washington Wizards. The Dallas Mavericks got a sneaky two-time Chinese Basketball Association MVP to sign with them. Michael Beasley, how he feels about the Lakers. More news about Isaiah Thomas. And we're also going to be talking about the owner of the Golden State Warriors. But the first story of today, we're going to be talking about Dwyane Wade. We knew over the weekend that he was going to get a monstrous deal from a Chinese Basketball Association team that was then the Flying Tigers. We know traditionally Chinese basketball big contracts aren't as big as NBA contracts, period. So we didn't know exactly how much it was going to be, but it looks like he has an offer, not from the Flying Tigers, but by the Golden Bulls, so a separate Chinese Basketball Association team. And what looks like the deal is 3 years worth $25 million. Now, that is something to actually consider if you are Dwyane Wade. It's simply because if you stay and you play for the Miami Heat, which if you stay in the NBA, probably the only team you're ever going to play for again is the Miami Heat. So if you play for Miami, you're more than likely going to be playing for the veteran minimum, which is that $2.4 million per season. If Dwyane Wade decides to go overseas, you're looking at 3 years, $25 million. That is way more than what you will be making here in the NBA. So I'm not quite sure if Dwyane Wade wants to go play in China. I'm pretty sure he would rather stay here. But he is signed to a Chinese shoe company, and for what it seems like when he signed that deal initially, the very first time, he re-upped recently, but the very first time he signed, the expectation was that he will someday play in China. Is this year going to be the day he decides to go and play in China? I'm not quite sure, but it's a pretty big offer for Dwyane Wade. You're not going to get that money at all in the NBA. So if you're playing strictly for the money, the best move is for you to go to China, play for the Golden Bulls, take that 3-year, $25 million deal, and then maybe your shoe brand even expands more and you make more money off of that as well. So Dwyane Wade reportedly gets a 3-year, $25 million deal from the Golden Bulls to go play in China. I'm not quite sure if he will take it, but it's definitely interesting and something to kind of think about if you are Dwyane Wade. Now, speaking of a player that we really don't know too much about, that's Markelle Fultz. What I mean by that, last year's first overall draft pick, but he was a mystery because his jump shot changed completely, and it looks like it was clear it was confidence-based. He really wasn't too confident in his jump shot, really didn't know, and we just simply think he forgot how to shoot. But he has been working with the world-renowned Drew Hanlon this offseason, who is a trainer, and he believes he has fixed Markelle Fultz's problem, which was his jump shot. And if he's able to fix that jump shot, Markelle Fultz could be a problem once again. Now, Yahoo's very own Jordan Schultz, what he tweeted out was this. He said, "Probable buzz is building around 76ers guard Markelle Fultz. One league source privy to Fultz's workouts was Framed Hoops trainer Drew Hanley," who we just talked about, "tells me Fultz's jumper is rebuilt, and that as a result, the 20-year-old guard is a completely different and vastly improved player." The major knock on Markelle Fultz was his jump shot. I believe if he got a jump shot together, he could be a better player. Now, I am on record questioning whether or not he could ever regain that true form, because you see players in the past, and even in other sports, it could be baseball, football, whatever. Once you kind of forget that golden rule, you forget how to throw, you forget how to shoot, whatever the case may be, it's hard to kind of relearn that, reteach yourself that, because a lot of it's muscle memory. So if you forget that, you're a completely different player, because now you're trying to change up that shot, and what kind of made you, at that elite status was how fluid his jump shot was in Washington. I'm not quite sure if he'll ever get back to that same form. I am on record, but it is going to be interesting to see what Markelle Fultz will bring once they report back to camp. Of course, he did not participate in the summer league, so we don't know exactly where he is at. But we've seen a lot of videos, but all the videos are showing everything but him shooting. You see a lot of videos of him dribbling. You see him doing layups. You see him dunking. You see him doing everything but taking a jump shot. So I'm not sure where his jump shot actually lies right now. I don't know if it's truly better or not, but if it is, that's definitely good. Now, Dr. Ladicia Holmes, she was on the Burner podcast, and what she said was this. She said, Markelle is going to be very, very surprising this season. You're going to be very pleased with Markelle. He is going to show you something this year on and off of the court. So he's getting high praise. I do wish the guy can, redevelop that jump shot, redevelop that confidence that made him the first overall pick in the draft. It's still to be determined to me. We'll see what happens. I am optimistic, and if you're a 76ers fan, you definitely hope this is true. You really hope, he has that jump shot back. He's knocking down shots consistently. He don't even have to be the knockdown shooter because the 76ers don't need that much more help. They're already at the brink of being one of the best Eastern Conference teams, or maybe even the best Eastern Conference team. But if Markelle Fultz is anything that we thought he would be coming out of the draft, you now are considering maybe Philly could potentially be a little bit better than the Boston Celtics if you get that player from Markelle Fultz, because we thought he was going to be a game changer. We thought he was going to be an elite scorer. Those are the things we thought of Markelle Fultz. Is he going to be able to provide that or anything close to that? That is still to be determined. But we are hearing he has a new jump shot. He is an approved player, and he'll be a different player come training camp. But, of course, time will tell. Now, one player who's on a new team is Dwight Howard. He is now with the Washington Wizards, and Dwight Howard now says that he would like to finish his career with the Washington Wizards. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? It should, because Dwight Howard said he wanted to finish his career with the Orlando Magic. Then he went to L.A., then he went to Houston. Then he said he wanted to finish his career with the Atlanta Hawks, his hometown team. Of course, that only lasted for one season. Then he was ultimately gone to Charlotte, traded, and now he's over here with the Washington Wizards. So will he finish his career here? I'm not quite sure. What are we going to get out of Dwight Howard, though, in Washington? That is something that's interesting because I like this move on the court. And I've always been a fan of the Washington Wizards in terms of talent the last few years. I think talent-wise, they're clearly one of the most talented teams in the Eastern Conference. I think they give a lot of teams run for the money, but the one question and the one downside of Washington is they have drastically been underperforming their talent level. And there's a lot of, let's say, miscommunication, disagreements in that Washington Wizards locker room. And then you start questioning, can Bradley Beal, can John Wall, can they coincide together and put the differences aside and make this work? They're able to get rid of Gortat. He is now in L.A., so if you get rid of Gortat, you bring in Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard on the court, he seems like he should be a great fit for John Wall. Both are athletic. Both can run the pick and roll well. And John Wall, he's going to feed the ball to Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard, he wants his touches. He wants to get the ball. John Wall, he's going to pass it to you. He's going to give you your opportunity to do his thing as long as you give him the opportunity to do his thing as well. So it works on the court. Then, of course, you have Bradley Beal still spacing out the court as well, the floor as well. So I think it can work. My only issue was Dwight Howard has been known to be also somewhat of a distraction in the locker room. A lot of players don't like playing with Dwight Howard. And it's not just one. He has a past of literally leaving locker rooms upset and happy that he's actually gone, because the Lakers, they weren't too upset when Dwight Howard left. The Houston Rockets, and especially James Harden, he wasn't upset when Dwight Howard left. There were plenty of reports that the Atlanta Hawks were actually excited when Dwight Howard left. And there's also reports that the Charlotte Hornets, a lot of their players didn't even like Dwight Howard. So the past teams that he's played for, he doesn't have the best track record. So he's going to the Wizards, who also don't have the best track record in their locker room. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it works from that perspective. But if they get things together in the locker room, off the court, I think the Wizards could be a problem in the Eastern Conference. As long as they're not playing down in the competition and they're playing like they're capable of playing, the Wizards could definitely be a good team. But they just have a major question mark, in my opinion. And I think a lot of that is going to dictate whether or not Dwight Howard stays long-term or not. If they don't have success immediately, he doesn't gel in that locker room, I don't think he will be there too much longer. I think the Wizards at some point will then have to decide maybe to trade some pieces around and see if you can get a different fit and maybe put that puzzle together. But Dwight Howard, I think he essentially he has to make this thing work. This is probably one of the best situations he is going to find at the moment. So hopefully he can make it work. And if he does, I think the Wizards could be a pretty decent team. Now, the Dallas Mavericks are going to be shifting over to them a little bit. They made a sneaky signing. Now, a player who's been on the Summer League roster a little bit, but they were able to sign Dwyane. And if you don't know who he is, don't worry about it. He's coming over from the CBA, so the Chinese Basketball Association, but he is a two-time Chinese Basketball Association domestic MVP. So a two-time MVP over there in China. He is now signing with the Dallas Mavericks. He did play shortly in the Summer League last season, and from what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot of them, but what I have seen is a player that could get to the basket with a nice amount of ease. Really not too difficult for him to get to the basket. Yes, he's not dunking on him. He is playing below the rim, nice layups, getting to the free throw line, those type of things. More of a finesseful player at that aspect. But he's able to get to the rim. He's a sneaky, nice passer as well. I've seen him drop a lot of nice little dimes to players. And he's also a player who can stretch out the floor. He's not a great shooter, but I have seen him knock down some shots and look pretty decent shooting the ball as well. So he's a player with some pretty decent upside and a player that a lot of regular fans don't really know about. Now, in China, he averaged 26 points a game last season, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal and a half per contest. Like I said, he's 6'7". He's going to weigh about 200 to 205. That's what he's kind of been fluctuating at in his listed weights. But it's a sneaky move for the Dallas Mavericks. And the Dallas Mavericks, I think, have had one of the better off seasons in the NBA this year. Now, are they a playoff team? I don't think so, simply because they're in the Western Conference. But they're in the East, they're, of course, a playoff team. West, they're one of those teams I think will be battling at the end of the year. But I think they'll be one of those back-end teams, maybe finish around 11, maybe at the highest 10 in the conference. But I like the moves the Dallas Mavericks are making. Dwyane, he is 24 years old, so he's not that old. And hopefully he can make a little bit of noise preseason. I'm not quite sure how much playing time he will get. He has played 7 years professionally overseas, so he does have experience playing against some top competition. Of course, it's not NBA comp, but it's still pretty decent competition. And I am excited. 2-time MVP in any league coming down to your team can only really help you, even if it is in limited minutes or coming off the bench. But the Dallas Mavericks, I think they have a pretty good signing there. Now, going to the Lakers and their newest signing, Michael Beasley. When he immediately signed with the Lakers, a lot of people thought either one or two things. Is a great signing because what Michael Beasley brings on the court, he's a guy who could score pretty much at any moment. He just severely lacks on the defensive side of the basketball, which makes him a liability and what makes him hard to play consistently, especially in important games. But he's a very exciting player, and you always hope with Michael Beasley because the potential has always been there. If he could get everything together, he could be a very, very good player in this league. He just hasn't put everything together. So a lot of people are still hoping on that potential of Michael Beasley, and he's still relatively young, so maybe he can put it together. It'll definitely be tough. And then the other side of the spectrum, a lot of people say, okay, oh my God, you put in Michael Beasley, and Michael Beasley he's a player that is hot-headed at times. We know this with Michael Beasley. He makes bonehead decisions. He's not the smartest basketball player IQ-wise, so that is definitely going to be a challenge for Michael Beasley. But he says to those fans who believe that, don't worry. He's basically saying this new look Lakers team is going to come together. And he said, yes, it looks like it could be misfits, but it could come together. And that's something that, Lakers fans, of course, are hopeful about. You have personalities that, at least on paper, you think off the court, it's going to be tough to manage them. It's going to be tough to coach them. On the court, they're all talented. They all bring different aspects of the game that can help and benefit the Lakers. It's just how well can Coach Luke Walton coach these guys? How prepared can he get them? And how ready can he get them? Because they all have distraction issues at times. They all have things off the court that could hinder a team, but they all bring special abilities. So I think the Lakers is going to be very, very interesting to watch this season, just from that aspect that the potential on the court could be a very, very good thing. And a dynamic we really haven't seen in the NBA so far. It's just how are they going to handle off the court? How are some of these players going to handle maybe not getting the minutes that they expect to get? Maybe some of these young guys, maybe they move to the bench and don't get the minutes that they expect to get. And how are all these players really going to mesh together off the court? I think that's the major issue for the Lakers. I think on the court, though, they have a chance to be a very, very exciting and special team, one of the best teams in the Western Conference for sure. I just don't know how good Luke Walton is going to coach them and get them ready. I am optimistic, though. I think eventually Michael Beasley could be right. I think this thing will come together, and it could be an exciting year for the Lakers. But there's always that chance it's not, and that's why it's going to be interesting basketball to watch, the new look Los Angeles Lakers this year. But we're going over to a former Laker, and that is Isaiah Thomas. Of course, only played a few games for the Lakers. He signed a minimum deal with the Denver Nuggets. We heard him come out and say yesterday that he thought about going back to the Boston Celtics, definitely called Danny Ainge. But he also saying now that he deserved a max contract before his hip injury, of course. Now, this is something that we did discuss at the time, whether or not he deserved a max contract. And definitely want to bring it up, and I want to hear from you as well as to whether or not you believe Isaiah Thomas deserved a max deal before his hip injury. Because while he was in Boston, he was unbelievable. But at the same time, we don't know if all of that was the system as well as him being able to score, because he's always been able to score. That's nothing new. He scored everywhere. In Sacramento, he scored in Phoenix, and then, of course, he scored in Boston. But at the same time, he was never that exact player that we've seen in Boston. When he went to Cleveland afterward and he went to the Lakers afterward, he still wasn't that same player. But at the same time, you don't know how much of that hip injury was stopping him from being that same player. So we don't know exactly where Isaiah Thomas is at the current moment. And we know he's in Denver. We know he's on the minimum deal. He has a year to prove himself. I think he's worth way more, of course, than what he's getting paid now, especially when you look at some of these salaries that other guys are getting. Isaiah Thomas, still a very efficient guy who you could love, especially off the bench role, which more than likely he will end up being from the Denver Nuggets unless an injury occurs. But I really want to know, would you have offered Isaiah Thomas a max if he never got hurt? And you're Danny Ainge and you're the Boston Celtics. He never got hurt. You give him that max deal. I see why you don't give it to him because of the injury. But even without an injury, I was always hesitant to give Isaiah Thomas a max. Now, I will pay him a lot of money, but I'll always be hesitant to give him the max simply because of his size and him being a defensive liability. I know it's unfair, but that's just how the business works. And when you think about Isaiah Thomas, you're always going to have to hide him on the defensive side of the basketball. And if you're always hiding him there, that causes different personnel that you have to put out on the court, because you can't just trust, hey, IT, go lock this guy up, go lock up Steph, go lock up this dude, because he can't always do that. So, yes, he's a dynamic scorer, but max money, when I'm looking for a max player, I'm looking for somebody who can contribute pretty much in every aspect of the game, and I'm not quite sure he does that. So I'm not sure if he deserves the max money, but that's how he feels, and I love that he has that chip on his shoulder. I love the fact that he has something to prove, because this is a prove-it year for Isaiah Thomas. If he doesn't go out there and perform, he could kiss any opportunity of getting those major dollars goodbye, because it's not going to happen. If he comes out here and has a fantastic year, Isaiah Thomas, once again, will be in conversations to get paid. It still won't be max. I don't think a lot of teams are willing to give him the max, but he has opportunity to get paid and another opportunity to start on another team at the end of the season. But going on to teams and GMs and owners, the Golden State Warriors owner, Joe Lacob, he issued a warning to the rest of the league. Now, this was in the article that was published by The Athletic yesterday. So on Monday, they posted this, and this is what the owner of the Warriors had to say. He said, there's a lot of market inefficiencies in the NBA. Other teams could have gotten Cousins, but they didn't. There's always going to be some sort of opportunity, some inefficiency, I believe. We're still really hungry. That's what people should be worried about if they're going to be worried about anything. Now, with that quote, basically, he's trying to get at two different things. He's trying to get at, one, don't say the Warriors ruined basketball, because anybody could have gotten DeMarcus Cousins, and that's actually true. Of course, when you see the headline, DeMarcus Cousins goes to the Golden State Warriors, you don't like the headline, unless, of course, you're a Golden State Warriors fan. But when you further look at it, and then it comes across later that he has 0 offers from any team, You can't blame the Warriors if a guy calls you, especially an all-star. He calls you. And DeMarcus Cousins called the Golden State Warriors, and he asked, could he play for them for one season? You will be a fool to say no. You have an opportunity to get one of the best big men in the NBA. If he calls you, you have to make that deal, and they made that deal. Yes, it's just a one-year deal, but that's exactly what they did. Vice versa. You had the opportunity to get Kevin Durant. He wants to come play for you. You're not going to tell Kevin Durant no. So for the Warriors, I don't think they should be villainized in terms of ownership and how they built the team. They outdrafted a lot of players. They drafted Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes. They were able to get lucky a few times, able to, snatch away Andre Iguodala from the Denver Nuggets. They were able to get Kevin Durant. They're now able to get DeMarcus Cousins. So there is some luck there, and just from building your brand and your prestige, able to get some more players. But I think for the Warriors organization standpoint, you're not going to turn down any of these players. So I do see what he's talking about from that perspective. Now, the shot he's clearly taking at other owners in the league is that we're still really hungry, and that's what people should really be worried about, if anything at all. I think that's the most important thing to take away from this, because he is essentially saying they're still trying to win championships. And unless you could find a way to stop them, they're going to keep winning championship. And that is now going to put the pressure on a lot of these other owners. We know how Houston obsessed was trying to beat the Golden State Warriors, and they got close. But I do think the Houston Rockets took a step back this season. The Lakers, clearly, they're trying to build a roster that could beat the Golden State Warriors, and you can see they're trying to beat them at a separate game, almost the complete opposite game that the Warriors are going with. So they're trying something different. Teams are now going to have to try to adapt and do something differently, and that's how you're going to beat the Golden State Warriors. It's going to be extremely tough to beat them at what they've already mastered. They've mastered a certain play style, and at some point for the Golden State Warriors, it's going to get too easy unless teams adapt. And I think some teams are starting to adapt, and it might take a couple of seasons for these teams to get there. Of course, the Golden State Warriors, their biggest problem is going to be from within, and that is re-signing all of these players next offseason, making sure Klay Thompson doesn't leave, making sure you keep Draymond Green, and trying to either pay this crazy tax bill they're going to have. Because if they pay all these guys, their tax bill is going to be insane. They're for sure going to be the highest paid, the most expensive roster of all time if they keep the current roster the way it is. And it looks like they're planning on doing that, which means these teams have to get creative and they have to figure out a way to stop it. But of course, we know all dynasties come to an end at some point. It's just a matter of the race. How long is it going to take for one of these teams to knock them off, and which team is going to knock off the Golden State Warriors? Now, the NBA could be potentially ruined by the Golden State Warriors, but LeVar Ball, yes, LeVar Ball, he has a way that hopefully all this could be changed, and that way is to create a big baller brand alternative to the NBA. So LeVar Ball is planning on creating an alternative. Now, he created an alternative to college basketball with the JBA and the Junior Basketball Association. Not trying to knock it. In my opinion, from what I've watched, it is inferior to big-time college basketball still. The talent level there isn't the same talent level that you will see, out of ACC basketball. It's clearly not it at all. So is he going to be able to successfully create an alternative to the NBA? He's not the only one to ever try it. I don't think this will work at all. I think this will be a disaster, but I think he's trying to create another platform for his sons to play basketball, because I'm not quite sure if LiAngelo will ever make it. I don't think LiAngelo will make it to the NBA. I'm clearly on record saying I don't think he's an NBA talent, but he could be the alternative to the NBA type of talent, and he could definitely ball there. You see the numbers that they're all putting out on LiAngelo and LaMelo putting on in the JBA. Maybe it's that type of talent. LaMelo, he has the opportunity maybe to make the NBA. LiAngelo won't. But knowing LeVar Ball, he could be creating this as another showcase for his sons, maybe to make money. But is this a real thing that we should pay attention to? Absolutely not. I don't think any way a big baller brand alternative will overtake the NBA or really be too successful, because all the top players are going overseas, or they're just playing in the NBA or going to the G League and trying to make it to the NBA, going through that route. So I don't see it working, but we'll see. It's interesting. We'll see what LeVar Ball could pull off. Maybe he could put together a league and shut me up I'm not quite sure, but that is the plans right now for a big baller brand alternative to the NBA. But that is everything I have for today's episode. Let me know how you guys feel about this stuff in the comment section about all of these topics. There was a lot of topics today. Will LeVar Ball be able to successfully create an alternative to the NBA? I don't think so. The Warriors, Joe Lacob, issuing a warning to the rest of the league. Should teams be worried, and should teams be able to put together a team that could beat the Golden State Warriors relatively soon? And if so, who do you think are the teams that are the closest to being able to knock off the Golden State Warriors? But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, please go ahead and leave this video a like. It helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's your boy DLloyd. I'm going to see y'all next time. Peace.